So, what is digital transformation? Businesses need to adapt to stay relevant and empower people to do their best work by rethinking processes, embracing technology to help transform how they operate and deliver value, resulting in increased efficiency and profitability. The problem with digital transformation is the industry often thinks about the outcome without talking about the process to get there. So, digital transformation outcome will look something like this. You'll have data sources that go into data manipulation, which will be something like HighByte, Maestro Hub, Litmus, or some other solution that pipelines data from the sources and organizes and structures it for the following processes, which is investigation, dashboard, and then reporting. We'll go those into further detail in a little bit. But the strategy breaks here. The thing is data people that run the data manipulation piece don't always understand the data sources. They can sometimes, but there's just a disconnect here. And that's where the strategy breaks because this doesn't represent how the system is functioning now. And that's what we'll go into now. This is the end goal, but in reality, this is how the industry is currently functioning. You have data sources that go into an investigation solution, then data manipulation can potentially happen, dashboard, and then reporting. Now, the problem is investigation at this phase is oftentimes still completed in spreadsheets, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets. You export the data from the data sources and then you create reports or insights in the investigation to let you know what may or may not have happened recently into your environment. So, the current reality, the problem happens on the floor. Investigation starts with static data like Excel. Reports are generated days after the incident. Dashboards reports are created by like a business intelligence team, subject matter experts which are creating these Excel spreadsheets are consulted, and the outcome of those reports and dashboards are no one trusts them because they don't match to the point that the subject matter experts, in this particular case I always like to call them process engineers that understand the way the industry works, they don't trust these reports because it doesn't match. And they never want to be caught in a situation where they don't feel confident in explaining the report. So they always go back to Old Faithful, and that is Excel. So the ideal transformation, digital transformation strategy needs to move something from a static analytics tool to a real time investigation tool. So, data sources go into an investigation tool that can take data sources from all different solutions to then give you the ideal sources of data. So, then you can do the data manipulation and context. From here, you will learn from the investigation what the important data is. We'll get into who does what in this next in a few steps or a few more slides. But once you have data manipulation, then you can create dashboards and then you can create reports. So I've come up with this thought that's called the operational investigation strategy. And it's a way to kind of guide you on what the purpose of digital transformation is. It is to empower one person to own the journey, or potentially one person own the journey from discovery to dashboard using real time data and minimizing the handoff. And handoffs are like playing the telephone game. If I tell you what this data means, and then you don't interpret it the way I have explained it to you, you may use and or misuse that data. And that's when you start creating dashboards or reports out of business intelligence teams that don't always match up with what the intention of that data was. And that's where the context comes in. So, why? We believe engineers should be able to solve their own problems, own and solve their own problems through real time investigation and validation. What a streamlined, easy to use, safe investigation platform. We need to empower them to use a tool in which they will not break data, delete data, or break processes during their investigation process. So, who does what along this line if we think about it? So, you have sources on the left hand side. These sources will be process, process data, manufacturing execution data, quality data, shift schedule, and work order systems. These are the foundational data points that are included in that OT digital transformation strategy. And who owns this sources of data? It's the database admins and the automation engineers. And why are they're the ones that create the data, whether that's putting it somewhere and then becoming a source of information. Now, investigation is in real time. You are focused on the actions of insight that include downtime investigation, off quality, and efficiency. And who will be doing these things? First and foremost, the automation engineer is going to be very interested in the downtime investigation. So, having a tool in which they can investigate outside of just looking at the process data is going to be key. And process engineers are the ones that are really, really going to take value from this because they're going to have all the data sources in a single platform that in real time they can find the answers as quickly as possible. And the why behind having a single platform for all the data, they need all of the data. And this will be built out for the process engineers and the automation engineers. So, data manipulation. This is when you start thinking about that pipeline, context enrichment, unified namespace. This is where you are creating a structure for investigation to potentially and eventually be on the other side of the process. So, your investigation is already going to be using cleaner data. And once you use cleaner data, you're setting yourself up to future uses of AI. So, who is going to be doing this data manipulation? The first person that's probably going to have a lot of this knowledge is going to be the automation engineers. The next person that's going to be working with us as well is going to be the process engineers. And why do I always bring up the process engineers? The process engineers live and breathe this data. It is it is un- it is the most important part of them solving problems within the manufacturing facility, and they know the data, and they're creating a infrastructure for their upstream teams for ease of use and results finding out. So, dashboards, what do we think about when we think about dashboards? We think about availability, quality, and performance. Now, you might be thinking, well, OEE, isn't that what makes up OEE? And that is correct. Overall equipment effectiveness is a indicator that we should look into investigation. So those are the results of creating dashboard. Of course, there's other things that will be subsets of availability, subsets of quality, and subsets of performance. But at the end of the day, that is going to be your roll up to see how effective your facility is running. So, who will be building these out? The process engineers. Once again, they understand the data, and also the business intelligence teams as they understand what the needs are for the next stage. And why are we doing this? Because we need to be alerted that there is a problem. And part of that data manipulation and context creating is allowing the alerting mechanisms to be more valid and trusted. And this is where things really start getting interesting because There's dashboards and visualizations everywhere, but at the end of the day, it's focused on trust. You never want a plant manager to come out to the floor and say, "Why is the OEE down?" And they get some answer like, "Oh, somebody didn't start blah, 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 and our data of OEE is incorrect for today." And when you have that level of behavior, you stop trusting the data. And if you don't have someone you can go ask, then you just stop believing and looking at these dashboards because you can't trust them. So you need to be able to ask your process engineers, your automation engineers, why something is down or incorrect, and enable them to create action to fix said information. Because we don't need to say, "Oh, well, that's the BI team, they made that. We'll have to call them and get that set up." And then you spin circle around all the time to build that out. So that's why the BI team and the process engineers to work together in tandem in that dashboarding. And all of this is for like management. Let's say think of plant management, operations, local management to get an idea of how their facility is running and so forth. Then this rolls up into reports, which is the last and final thing. And we won't get into AI because that would be kind of somewhere along the middles here. Is the result is historical efficiency, forecasting, getting an idea of what is going on in each of my individual facilities in a way that is in alignment and measured the same, dependent on that data manipulation and context, which is the unified namespace. So, why? It's the overall production status. How is my company doing? Am I going to be making money this month? Is this plant making money? And it's all about the decision making on how to provide resources for those facilities. For this is for the upper management and the sourcing piece. So, as you follow this flow, this is the current way to solve and lean into the transformation of the existing to the future. So, the investigation process, I always wanted to highlight that OEE isn't necessarily valuable in itself, but it is an indicator that you should start diving in. So, you're going to have company OEE that rolls down into multiple plant OEEs. Below that, you're going to have production line OEEs, and then you're going to have section of that production line OEE. OEE is your first signal, not the last metric. So, digital transformation outcome, data sources to investigation, data manipulation to dashboard, OEE, and report. But don't put the cart before the horse. We will get here eventually.